Hello, welcome to the live reading and presentation of The Way to Z for Camberwell Arts Festival. I am Wes White, the author of The Way to Z and the artist responsible for the tarot designs that you'll be seeing alongside my poetry reading. What is The Way to Z? It's a sequence of poems inspired by the letters of the alphabet that are so familiar to all of us, inspired by their shapes, their sounds, and their histories. And that's the really interesting part, I think, the histories of the letters of the alphabet. What might I mean by that? So every letter in our alphabet has a history which goes back beyond the origins of the English language. And the English alphabet, some argue, is more correctly called the Latin alphabet. If you imagine things written in Latin, carved in stone by the Romans, they were using almost the same alphabet that we use today. But there are even more ancient symbols that the letters that we use and that the Romans used derived from. This goes back through Semitic alphabets, Phoenician alphabets, through to Egyptian hieroglyphs, and possibly beyond. If I say to you that the letter A used to be a symbol that stood for an ox's head or a bull's head, and if you imagine a capital A upside down, you can still kind of see that bull's head there. The legs of the A become its horns sticking up. And the poem cycle that I have written is both, first and foremost, it's an imaginative exercise, and it kind of became a surreal quest. It's also a way of exploring these histories of these letters. When I first started writing it, I imagined that I'd be writing 26 standalone poems, that they'd all be separate from each other. But I realized quite quickly, as I was writing the letter A, it felt like the beginning of a journey, and I found myself wanting to tell that journey in the poem cycle. So I wrote it actually in a way blind. I didn't know too much about the history of the letters when I started, and I wanted to learn about them as I was going along. So I was doing it without a map. And some of them were different than what I'd expected, because I first learned about this idea of the English letters having this long, thousands of years history, back into things that we wouldn't recognize and be able to read without learning them separately. So as I was writing it, I found myself finding that something that, for example, I read in an encyclopedia years and years ago that one of the letters, I think it was the letter M, had been based on a symbol for an owl. And I certainly had the sense that several of the letters were based on birds. And the linguist's understanding of this seems to have changed dramatically since that old encyclopedia was written. And who knows, the understanding might well change again. I won't list through every symbol that I'm referring to in the poems, but it's worth saying that the final one, Z, is derived from a symbol called Zion, which was a weapon, and it might have been a sword. So I became aware late on in the writing of the poems that what this surreal quest that I'd embarked on was really a quest for a sword, which felt wonderfully symbolic in itself. It's also worth saying that lots of the letters stand or used to stand for body parts, and several of them were sticks. Also, you'll find that there are places where I've used the meaning of the letter as we hear it. So there's an I voice that you encounter in the poem. It goes from talking to you to then saying, I did this, I did that, and that happens at the letter I. You'll then find that you come back into it when we reach the letter U. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to display the tarot designs that I've subsequently done that accompany these poems on your screen. So you'll be able to see those designs at the same time as you're listening to the poem. And there's an interplay between the letters themselves, the poetry, and the images that you're seeing on the screen. And actually from that to the traditional images in tarot decks. I'm not expecting everyone by any means to get all of the different references that have gone in here. It's something that I hope will be enriching for people to investigate if they wish to. And also I hope that it will be enjoyable to experience just as a journey, if you take it purely as an exploration of the interplay between the conscious and the subconscious. And the one element that I haven't really spoken about coming into all of this is really my own imagination. And there are a couple of places where I describe dreams that linking in different ways with the letters and imagery you're hearing and seeing. And those are real dreams that I've had. So there's an element of autobiography to it. So I think I've been talking long enough about the piece. I think we want to go into it. I'm going to go all the way from A to Z. I think that full reading will probably take in the region of about 40 minutes. I don't mind if people want to get up and have a cup of tea in the middle of it or anything like that. And this should be available later on if you do find that you want to pause and come back to the reading. But I hope some of you will want to join me all the way through from A, the crack in the cave wall, the ox's head, to Z, the sword at the other end. I'm now going to share my screen. So you should be able to see the first card in a moment, which is the card for the letter A, of course. And I've used the Ace of Pentacles to stand for that letter in my deck. So here we go. A crack in the cave wall, an aperture to a view with a horizon, a capped pyramid, a mountain, a man made of clay, a scaffold, a plough, an ox's head, a ram, a road. Anything, a five-pointed star. Anything, a dance in the heavens. Anything, Aphrodite, an acorn, all girls' names. Also an apple, and you should always take an apple with you at the beginning of adventures, especially a long journey, or anyway, a journey into the unknown. B. Beyond the bull's head, you come by an ancient building, a ruined house. Before it, on burnt ground, stands a birch. Beneath its branches, butterflies. Between its boughs, birds. Behind its bark, beetles. Below, bright against the blackened soil, beds of borage and buddleia bushes burgeon. Bumblebees bother its buds as it bends in the breeze. You brought a box of questions for the tree, but it will give but one word back, just be. C. Of course, we cannot simply be eternally. The clock ticks, crickets chirp, crows caw. Your presence in this place is no accident. You came here for a certain purpose. The celestial ceiling clouds over, then clears, uncovering a crescent moon so crisp you can see the curves of the craters. The carbonated soil is changed again in the twice cast light. What can you discern? Throughout the charred ground, countless artifacts once concealed catch the beams. You crouch to explore and discover crab's claws continue. Champagne corks carry on. Copper coins cease. Curling into your fingers as if crafted for no other function is what is it? A cane? a cudgel, a club. You come to your feet again, clutching it with care, savour its heft in your hand. Could it be, in fact, the object of your search, so recently commenced? Come off it. It calls you to action. You succumb to its tacit command and chuck it clean over the cottage. D. You decided to descend to the house and did, going down in the direction of the derelict dwelling. Everything about the house had passed. The doorways empty and dark. You didn't intrude, distracted as you were by a duo of white wooden boards down to your right, doubtless the dismantled doors. Tacked to the middle of the nearest one with black and white hazard tape, a sheet of paper, duck egg blue, displayed the following message: 3 doors, circa 1850s, and its dimensions. That did nothing for you, and yet deep inside you divined something disguised by the note. It played on your mind, drove you to discover what was hidden. Do it, it demanded. You delicately lifted the ad to find behind a drawing a fish of indeterminate description, a dace or something different. Despite its dullness, it dazzled you. You dallied, dazzled by the doodle, until a voice from the depths declared, "This door is the death of all that is done." And at dawn, your attention is drawn to a cry from the east. E. An entity emerges from the sunrise, at first indistinguishable from the enveloping light, then in abstract blobs of emerald and eggplant, eventually resembling an elk or an eland or any horned earth creature, except those extensions aren't horns, they're arms held aloft, as if embracing the morning sky. Exclaiming endless ecstasy, he exits the engulfing energy, then eclipses it, exhibiting energetic exaltation. He doesn't even acknowledge your existence, while his note, his exquisite note, echoes everywhere. E. F. The frequency fades, and you follow the fellow's frantic gaze floorwards, where, freakishly, you find he's sinking into the ground. First, his fantastic feet, followed fast by his fit legs and the rest of his frame, his femurs, fibula, fat gut, false teeth, all the way to that furrowed forehead and the follicles of his formerly fine coiffure. Even then, his arms remain aloft. In 5 seconds flat, he's in up to his funny bones, and only now that he's nothing but forearms do you figure it out. His fingers are folded into fists, fixed around an iron staff. Funny, you're thinking, that wasn't there before. Finally, he softens his grip, vanishes into the earth, leaving nothing but the mace among the foliage. Fuck. G. Gosh. You go down to the ground again and have a gander at this gift. In fact, the bludgeon's not just iron, its edges and corners are gilt, glinting gold against the green. Then again, there are gaps through which you glimpse bare wood, and you gradually recognize it's the self-same stick you flung over the house, brought back armor-clad, metallurgically guarded and graced. You gather it up. God, it feels good. And again, it just could be the grail you seek, could it? Your fingers weigh it, testing against gravity. It hums in your grip. That grows to a groan, and for the first time, its song is ringing clear in your thoughts. It comes through in a perfect chord. I've got to go to the garden again. I am the guardian. So you give it back to where it came from, and it glides in a glorious arc. and it lands in the grass. H. Here is a hare, he hears your heart. Hello, puts forth the fair-haired hare. Have to rush, horribly behind for a hugely important appointment. That's how you think you heard it in your human head. What he said is wholly hard to echo here. Have to rush, heavens, Hades. He hops hurriedly under a hurdle in the hawthorn hedgerow. I. Leaving the old house and its charred garden behind, you decide what else to follow the hare over the stile. However, you have to hesitate when, holding on to the topmost bar, you can't help but notice the tips of your fingers have turned invisible. You draw them back and they reappear, put them back on the stile and they're gone again. Your limb feels normal the entire time, itself intact. Tentatively, you try putting your whole hand through the fence, beyond the fence. Sure enough, it vanishes, your arm finishing sharply in midair. And there's a movement in the field ahead. The hare? But you're barely conscious of that. Understandably, your focus is on your hand, or lack of hand. Eerie as this looks, it feels fine, so you go for it, drawing your elbow back to punch the air ahead. And in that same spot in the field, you see it, your arm punch out of the ground in a straight vertical line. You lean forward to investigate, and as you do, your eyes cross the boundary, and I'm looking back at you from in the field. I am looking back at you, crossing the stile. This is weird, and I can see you hesitate, but I have to do this now. I have to see what's out here. I put my hand down on the soil and bring the other one through with it. Putting them both down flat, I push myself up from out of the earth and watch you disappear. I keep going until the entire body is mine. I'm standing out here on this broken patch of land beyond the hedgerow, a vertical line, and there's nobody there where you were. J. I grew a tail. J'ai fait pousser une queue. K. If you ever think you could be dreaming, you can try a hand check. Look at your hand's open palm and flick back and forth between that and the back. You'll know if you're awake. Your knuckles will just be your knuckles. Your little finger just a pinky. If not, if you're dreaming, there are all kinds of freaky possibilities. Your fingers could be tied in knots or covered in dark lipstick kiss marks or made of lank kale. I check. It looks normal, I think. Only when did I get ink? What is normal? I blink, and in that quick movement there's a sparkling kaleidoscope of black and shocking pink. I don't know if I'm awake. Something's out of kilter, and I reckon if I take a breath, I can make things happen here. I close my eyes again, take my time, hold my palm out flat. What will I make? A knight or a rook, a mask or a book, a key, a knife, a dirk, a Chris? Could either kiss my oof, with a whack it smacks into my hand from the sky. And do I dare to sneak a peek? And could this be the sword I seek? I do, I dare. I sneak a look. That's new. Right there, a shepherd's crook. L. It's lovely. A leather handle at the heel, long hazel shank and glinting silver ferrule, completed at my shoulder with a curl of golden antler. I'll walk a long while with this cleek. Meanwhile, looking along the landscape, I feel something is surely lacking. If this is my crook, what will my livestock be? Elephants, cattle, llamas, leopards, lemurs, leverets, lemmings? The fields are empty, full of nothing likely. Initially directionless, I still feel a silent calling, and I let my legs yield to it. There's a flicker in the sky as I go, small clouds blocking and unblocking the solar glare. Their shadows follow my shadow through fields splendid with purple flowers, lilac and lavender, tulip and lily, violet and viola. It's getting late by the time I realize at last, until I hold the staff aloft and swirl the sky with it, the little fluffy clouds fleeing left and right, orbiting the invisible line. They'll be my flock. I close my eyes, that kaleidoscope again, and level the walking stick with the lie of the land. Allow it to lead me. When I look, it's lined up with a lake. M. From a mile away, it might be mud. Move closer, it becomes a mirror. The basin almost empty, its lake more of a mere. From there, my face looks back at me. In the same way, I remember myself marking you, your merger with the air at the moment I emerged from the meadow. Beyond my head, the murmuration of cumuli meanders in misty sympathy with my own emotion. I am here for a reason. I shake the stick, and at the same time, circles grow from pinpricks in the water. At the same time, I feel them coolly blessing my cranium. At the same time, something makes a movement in the murk, animating the mire. What's there? Under air, water. Under water, earth. Under earth, fire. N. Now you see it, now you don't. Apparently energized by the rain, the ground shifts in numerous places simultaneously, now in front, now behind, now beneath the pond, now around the bank, now beyond, now under my knuckles, now under my knees. Too close for comfort, I start back away from it. Then I can take it all in, its undulating movements animating the foundation, the ground churning. Now and then, or now, and now, and now, and now. Its skin can be seen glinting silver, and it's enormous, a monster, serpent argent, snake rampant. In the reflection of the heavens, the clouds have gained negative height, turned to inverse nimbus. Around it, the naga turns and turns, up and down, in and out, between the liminals of the elements, nimble as lightning through the muck, until eventually I notice it's forming into an unbroken ring. O. Ouroboros, one whole loop. The colossal cobra goes around the pond, holding its tail in its mouth. Ouroboros, Omega. Once I dreamed I was at the old oaks in Glastonbury, those primordial mothers of acorns known as Gog and Magog. Two sheep stood on the path, one black as coal, one white as snow. They were both ovine ovates, owners of knowledge. The coal one spoke words of portent in an otherworldly tongue. Its voice was a rumble of thunder spilling across normal borders. I could not comprehend. I woke. I look at my crook. It's shaking. It shook. It will shake. I look at the lake. The surface of that pool is and will always be and has always been a reflection of the sky above. Right now, as I stare, the clouds that had grown into towers have also grown down in that mirror, have also grown dark in that mirror. Surrounded by an anaconda hoop, those onyx clouds below look bottomless, a void. For all the world, it could be an eye. I look at the sky. The surface of that ceiling is, will always be, has always been a reflection of the pool below. Now I can see it clearly. The mammoth python doubled overhead becomes an iris around a perfect obsidian round. So one monstrous organ looks down on us open. The atmosphere become a cyclops. The oculi ogle each other, so ogle themselves, one in the cosmos, one in the ground. Do they see me too? I don't know. But as soon as that thought crosses my consciousness, the great orbs flick across to stare straight over in my direction. They bore into my soul, and I can't cope. In the same moment, I swoop the crook through the air. At my unspoken command, the cornea in the sky is covered, the oculus gone, concealed, occluded, closed. I look down. There too, those echoed eyelids have come together, now a mouth. Oh. P. The lips press together, then part. It's speaking. I am the ink pot. Are you the printer? I'm petrified and puzzled. To progress on my pilgrimage, I presume I must be positive. I prepare to respond. But at the precise point when I open my own mouth, I'm interrupted. Are you a peasant? Repeatedly, I prime myself to answer. But each time I'm stopped before even part of a phrase can pass my epiglottis. Are you a pilot? Are you a pioneer? Proclaim. No opportunity to do so. I'm panicking. Have you a parachute? The lips part wider, opening to reveal a pit into which, it appears, I am expected to jump. Abruptly, I comprehend. Exploits speak more powerfully than proverbs. I step up to the point of what was once a pond is now a portal. Now my position is truly precarious on the lip of the lips, and as it speaks, it is the ground moving, myself thrown back and forth with it. I risk being catapulted in, never mind leaping. Are you pollution? Are you a pest? As I'm propelled one way and then the other, perversely the physics of the situation play on my mind. How deep is that pit? If this is a mouth, will it lead to a belly? The earth exhales. I can smell the breath of rock, the breath of mantle from the most profound depths. Are you a policeman? What is your purpose? Are you prejudiced? I pull myself up, stooping on the pink pillow of the lower lip. Each tooth is a peg as big as my whole body. Are you provincial? I haven't a parachute. I jump. Q. Queerer and queerer, quoth the quester. Question. Quid sum? What am I now? I seem to recall I grew a tail a little way back. J'ai fait pousser un cul. So I'm a squirrel monkey, a mirakai, a top macaque, the aquatic ape. I'm falling quickly. I've fallen quite far. My tail is a quirt whipping the air, searching for something to grab. It finds the spot. It ties a knot. Ah. I remember another dream I had even longer ago when I was a child. I dug a pit in the sand on the beach. I was trying to go as far down as possible. It worked. I fell through a crack of red rock as deep as the world. Rushing down, I passed a mirror and for the briefest moment saw my own reflection, wherein, horror, I was a werewolf. I realise now that to my younger self, my bearded face today, glimpsed in a mirror for less than half a short breath, might have struck me as lycanthropic, relatively grizzled, sprouting dark hair from cheek and chin. Perhaps it was only my future appearance that startled me. Right now, my prehensile rudder wrapped around some root or other, Far down in the crevasse, I can linger and stare at that mirror. Once more the reflection parts from my reality. In there I am resplendent, leonine. Rose-coloured locks spring from every part of my face and head. If, right now, I really am the werewolf I recoiled from years before, then perhaps this creature is some further future incarnation, a prospect to relish. I could hang here forever, but I can't hang here forever. I have to remember the prize, the rapier relic I'm after. I'm sure now it's a sword. I grasped it in my third eye for the briefest of junctures before when I reached for my crook. Rats! Curses! Arse! Is this a trap? The truth ripples through me a shiver. I'm farther than ever from the treasure. There can be no return from the underworld. I can only go lower, lower, low. Well then, there's only one way onward. Go. The Red Lion and I tilt our heads towards each other in shared recognition. Then I release my grip to free fall once more through the earth. S. So, I descend past so much fossilized stuff submerged in the soil. Soup cans, shirts, speakers, strange glass structures, creased silk dresses, saber-toothed skulls, possum spines, the exoskeletons of scorpions, starfish and spiders. Swords sometimes, not my sword of course. It seems endless until, suddenly, I slam into Sinopia sandstone somewhere in the subterranean depths, the basis of all places. I stand cautiously, seemingly unscathed, except that seconds later, that shepherd's staff I've been schlepping plummets after me, slaps me on the jowl, lands on the floor below, and shatters into 50 pieces. Struck clean out of my mouth is a 51st, a small, whitish, lumpen stem, a cuspid. Inside my mouth, there's no pain, but I can taste the blood. I think of those in the great moor I stepped into to get here. Stupid, stupid. Surely now I'm impossibly lost. Despondent, I stoop to scoop up my erstwhile tusk. A scent of sugar fills my nostrils when I touch it. It's a little sticky. Staring closer, it looks just like a stick of chalk. Strange. T. Taking that tooth, I trace 2 short white tracks on the stone with it. First, top to bottom, next, left to right. T denotes the spot. U. Thump, thump, thump. The dull thudding sound comes from underground, louder, louder, until the rock is crumbling and up from underneath, you return. You, clutching the club you chucked over the house hundreds of hours ago. Although I'm quite sure you've always been just at my tail, to be stood in front of each other is utterly uncanny, surreal, unbelievable. You're my double, or I'm yours. So the thought occurs of another human out with our dual group, observing 2 columns, symmetrical, joined by the ground under us. Neither of us says a word. After a minute, you shrug, murmur something inaudible, and gesture at the wall. I look up. Another looking glass. V. In the vanity mirror, it's still you, but a sharper you, every curve converted to a vertex. W. Where were we? At the basis of all places, in front of our umpteenth mirror. When? Now, and always. What were we watching? A variant version of you. Who? Your double, a double you. Your echo, your reflection. What followed? We witnessed the doppelganger reaching forwards to grip the edge of the mirror, fingers on the rock-hewn frame, and then pull all the way through the hole we thought glass to emerge and stand with us. Or we turned to face the unknown. X. We, you and I and them, your Xerox copy, your double, you plural, yous, us. Together, expectations extinguished, we explore the subterrane. We enter and exit 9 chambers, each exactly the same as the pre-existent before we reach the 10th. And that seems to be the extreme. Above the hollow entrance to each rock box room, and a Roman numeral has been exected, denoting its ordinance. In this example, X. I read 10. You read substation. They read no entry. This one is not like the others. In the center stands an ornate pillar. It connects the floor to the ceiling. Our lips and eyelids vibrate with the energy that pours through it. Our backbones tingle in sympathy. You hear me say, I don't know what that is. They hear you say, potential transformer. I hear them say, the spine of Osiris. They remain in chamber 9. You hover at the exit. I cross the threshold. Why? The final chamber yawns ahead. All time and space and every part of me shudders, amplifying the voice of the spine of Osiris. Why yoke? Why yellow? Why youth? Why you? Why years? Why years? Why years? Why years? Why yield? Why yesterday? Why yearn? Why yet? Why you? Why you? Why you? Why you? Why you? Why you? Yet you? Why yes? Z. Zounds, zing, zutalor. I flood with vertigo when I realize it. A lurch like when the plane drops in an air pocket, only 10 times the size. This is the very bottom of the world. Yes, the rock bottom, the nadir. But when I jumped into the moor, that moor was a reflection. If I nosedived into the crack in the rock, it was only the reflection of a rocket-like rise into the cosmos. Then this is also the zenith. The top and bottom of the world are the same, connected by a single unbroken line. I kneel once more and reach down to touch the roof of the world below my feet. Embedded in the firmament is a sword. The sword. I gaze in wonder. In the zinc fittings, I can see Osiris bones behind me. Behind them, you. Behind you, the mark my tooth made. Then my rise and fall, the mouth and the eye, the snake and the lake. The walk over pastures. I can see myself going back into the ground and see you reappearing over the fence. A white rabbit catches its breath. You catch a stick. A joyous man walks backwards into the setting sun. A fish drawn on a door announces the birth of all that will be. You catch a stick, a tree remains. Your journey ends. My fingers wrap around the hilt. And there, having found our sword, the Zion Z, we have concluded our journey from A to Z, and we have completed the way to Z. And hopefully I'm here now. And I believe that it's possible to ask me questions. And actually, I can already see that some questions have come in now. Just to say, for anyone who isn't sure, who might have questions and isn't sure who to ask them, if you are able to pop onto Camberwell Arts Facebook or their Twitter feed, you can leave a comment or you can tweet at them and ask questions there. And Shauna, who's been absolutely brilliant, who is the tech support here, is able to communicate them to me. So the first one that's come in is the use of alliteration a deliberate link to Old and Middle English poetry or just a fun addition? Well, the thing with that is, with the alliteration, the link to older English poetry is a happy thing, but it predominantly comes from the fact that I was trying to explore the sounds of the letters as well as their shapes and histories. And I thought that the most direct way to do that was to include the given letter as much as possible in the poem dedicated to that letter. So that's more prominent in some than others, and particularly it's most prominent in the early poems, in the A, B, and C, because what I found later on as I worked through the cycle was that I was enjoying more finding the way that the letter worked inside words as well. There are other places where the letters are doing particular things that aren't necessarily alliterative in the normal sense of starting a word. So the reason that in the poem for D, that one is the only one told in the past tense, and that's because we use the letter D a lot when we use the past tense. So we have all these words that end ed. You did this. Not a good example because it's not ed, but you walked here. So it was a way to get lots of Ds in. And the alliteration mostly came from a desire to feature that given letter as much as possible in the poem to that letter. Which came first, the images or the words? The words came first. I wrote the poems as a sequence independently of any thought of illustrating them. And I can't quite remember what it was that drove me to turn these into a tarot deck or to replicate the ideas in a tarot deck. And I should also say that the deck that I've designed is very strongly influenced by existing and classic tarot decks, and especially the one that is probably best known, which is the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot. And while there's currently an exhibition on the Camberwell Arts website of the cards, and if anyone wants to compare the cards that I've designed with the with historic tarot decks, and especially the Rider-Waite deck, you'll see what how they interact with the traditional images. And in some cases, there are real breaks with tradition, and in other cases, it's more like in other cases, I guess they're fairly close to the original or well-known designs. Do I have any literary influences? I think I have many literary influences. I think my work would be, I think any writer's work is impoverished if they aren't influenced by existing writing. The interesting thing for me with this one is that I was trying to allow my influences to be the nuts and bolts of storytelling, and even like the nuts and bolts beyond even the sense of fairy tale narratives and kind of archetypes, although those are there. But even getting into the things that hold language up, so trying to allow myself as much as possible to be influenced by those letters themselves, and as I've said, those ancient symbols. I would say though that there's definitely an Alice in Wonderland link in these poems. The fair-haired hare who appears, who is in a hurry, is he's an avatar for the White Rabbit before we really go down the rabbit hole and into the real weird of the poems. They might be weird enough already at that point, but that's one of the steps where it gets really weird. And then also this sense that there's a kind of voyage to the underworld. Well, that is partly Alice in Wonderland as well. She goes down a hole to get to that strange land. But I kind of had all of the archetypal stories going back to the Aeneid, of the idea of going underground and into a space where you're exploring some kind of underworld. And I don't know how this will have operated within the poems, but I remember that at that time I was reading quite a lot of Sylvia Plath when I was writing these, and I'm not sure how that's come through or if it would be perceptible to a reader, but I was kind of conscious of her language being in my head when I was writing it, and I couldn't point you to exactly how that's happened, but her voice was there to an extent. And it's worth saying at that point, actually, that Sylvia Plath is really best known for Ariel, and I think people think of her as a depressing poet because she has written some really powerful and painful poems brilliantly. But there's a lot more than that. And if you have enjoyed or even been interested in Plath's work, it's really worth seeking out her collected works where you get a much broader picture. And many other literary influences beyond that. But those are the ones that I'm kind of aware of working within these poems. 10th Bard of Glastonbury is a great title. Is there any kind of initiation process associated with the title? Now I have to be careful that I don't speak for like the next hour on this because it's such a wonderful thing. The Bardship of Glastonbury, I was first introduced to the notion of the bardic of the Bard of Glastonbury by my great friend Dervla Bradley, who was the second Bard of Glastonbury in modern times. And it's understood that there was an ancient tradition of bards in English towns and particularly around the southwest, which the Bardic College there has been trying to rekindle. So the question here is there an initiation process? To become what is technically the chaired Bard of Glastonbury, you have to enter a contest on a theme that is set by the outgoing Bard. So the contest that I took part in was set by the 9th Bard of Glastonbury. Actually, I took part in several. It took me 4 goes. That was how keen I was to do this, to get this title. And you write a poem or story or song, which is not me, unfortunately, on this theme. And you're then given up to 10 minutes to perform it in front of an audience in Glastonbury Assembly Rooms. And then there's a judging panel selected usually by the outgoing Bard as well, of kind of, often it involves elder bards or people that they respect creatively, and they name their winner at the end of the night. And there's lots more going on than this, but as I say, if you get me started, I'll talk for hours about this. It's really great, and I really think more places should look at what is happening in Glastonbury in places like that, and seek to replicate having a bardic presence in their own areas. I mean, it would be great if there could be a Bard of Camberwell that happens in the same way. The other thing beyond that, there is technically an initiation ceremony that you become a Bard of Glastonbury with a small b, and we get together and hold hands in times when we're allowed to hold hands with social distancing guidelines, at the foot of Glastonbury Tor, and we say words that are laid down, that commit the speaker to elevating the word and furthering the creative spirit in the community of Glastonbury. And I've since moved to London, so I've tried to bring that spirit with me. So this is the last question that's come in. So it's, do you plan to do anything else with the Way to Z? My hope is that it will, at some point before the end of 2021, so I'm thinking fairly long term, that it will be possible to purchase a copy of this bound together. So I'd like the poems to exist as an independent unit, for there to be just a book of the poems to read on their own, and for there separately to be a full tarot deck that you can actually interact with as a deck of cards. And then for there to be the two things to exist together, so that there could be an illustrated version. And my thought at the moment is that I'm probably going to crowdfund for that to happen, and so that the people who are interested can purchase whatever version of that it is they want to do, and that income will generate the necessary funds to actually produce it. So if you want to know about when that's happening, if you think you'd like to own a deck or a copy of the poems, or an illustrated book, or even an original print, or maybe even the original design itself, the actual artwork that I did, on the actual paper that I did it on. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter, which is just Wes White. I have a blog, which is Why Sweet Lie, if you put in whysweetlie.blogspot.com. Facebook, if you search Wes Viola, and if you just search Wes White Poet, most of the results that come up are me. So if you want news on that, please follow me there, and I'll keep you updated when anything is happening. In terms of things happening going forward, I also wanted to say that Camberwell Arts Festival is still happening through the rest of this weekend, all online. So look out for things on their social media and on the Camberwell Arts website. And this is going to include a collage workshop tomorrow. And there's also a talk happening about how museums are coping while closed, and the things that they're doing while closed and what that means, which is going to involve the Theatre Peckham director, and you want to look for #AD Realness, or just look for what Camberwell Arts are posting online, because they'll have all the right links and details there. I really want to say a big thank you to everyone that's joined me for this reading, to everyone who has asked questions, and to Camberwell Arts Festival itself, not least to Shauna, who's helped me hugely with all of the technical stuff, without whom this wouldn't be happening. Thank you and goodbye.